Hello and welcome to Live from America podcast. This is Hatem alongside me, Noam Dworman, the one and only owner of the Comedy Cellar. Hi, Noam.
Hello, Hatem.
And our good friend, journalist, podcaster, and amazing guy and funny, Mike Pesca is here, the host of the Gist. See, I said it right. So, welcome to the show,
50% of
Mike.
the time you did, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah.
Hatem. Thank you for having me back.
Good to have you. So, before we start, I'm gonna take 2 minutes. I just
All
want to
right.
say something, if I may.
Oh no.
Uh, um, we record this show on Thursday, this episode on Thursday.
Wait,
Today,
is this the anniversary of your heart transplant?
yes, sir. So
Okay,
today
I
is
take it back. Go ahead.
3/21. And I wanted to say, like, first, because of all the crazy things and we see in like humanity, the wars, the crimes at its worst, I've managed to see that at its best. That's why I always optimistic and I always have hope. And you know, 4 years ago, I was pretty much done. And some family and some guy gave me his heart, and that's why I'm still here. So unfortunately, I don't know who they are, but I hope that they are, in peace. And everybody should be a be part of
Donor.
donor. Yeah, I'm a little nervous.
It's okay.
And but the thing that I want to say is like, don't just be organ donor. Talk to your family because what a lot of people don't know is like, even if you are an organ donor, they have to get permission from your family. So what happened is like in an accident, obviously it's the worst time ever. And people ask you, hey, do you want to donate the organ? And they're nervous. But if you talk to your family and they know that this is your wishes, it's going to be important. It's going to be a major factor in that decision. It's going to be easier for you, for the team talking to you, for the person that you save in their lives. And you can save up to 8 lives, with just plus all the other tissues and stuff that you can donate. So, so obviously this is, I still don't comprehend that this has happened, but I want to thank that person again and their family specifically for, being strong at that time. And there's so many people who were there for me, and I called them all, I texted them today and told them that, but one of those people is right here. And, I could never, he opened his house to me, his business, his family, and gave me most of the most precious thing was his time. He always listened. So Noam, I don't know what to say, but you always been a friend, but during that time you were amazing and you really care. Some people was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And as soon as they start talking, it's like, "Oh, well, I was this," and they interrupt. But Noam was always there, and I always lucky. I have a lot of good friends, but thank you for all this because Comedy Cellar was time where I was like very depressed, and I would just go and sit there and always have company, always have friends, and always have people care. So,
Well, I mean, that's very nice of you to say, but the truth is that nice people find themselves with a lot of nice friends, not because they won the lottery by meeting the few nice people on earth, but because of what you bring out in people, not really what the people are. So, but whatever. I love you and I appreciate your words, and we're happy that you're healthy. Of course. What else
thank
can I
Hatem,
you.
why,
say?
why don't you know the donor? They choose to remain anonymous. That's like an adoptee situation.
So with organ donation, especially with heart, because the person obviously passed away. So there's the organization in the middle. You send them a letter, and they send to that family the letter. And if you both decided to meet, then they will arrange it. They tell you who they are. But if one of you don't want, and for the longest, I was hesitant. Like it took me a while to write the letter,
Mm-hmm.
because it's very hard to there's this weird donation. I remember when I was like, because there's this weird connection. I remember when I was in a hospital, and one days like you waiting for somebody to die, pretty much,
Yeah.
and it's so hard. And I remember like some days I'll be feeling better, I'll be talking imaginary to my donors, like, don't die today, just live more. I'm okay, So it's very hard to put the face to the gift. And I think it's harder for them, obviously. But some people do meet. If they both, I send a letter, and if they decide that they want to meet, they will send me a letter back. So
Oh, interesting. Now, do you know that New York State is one of the lowest organ donation rates in the country?
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
this is one of the things that I, I try to like. That's why I try to go to shows. It's still hard to talk about, but this is one of the reasons. Like, we call it the call. So there's two things: the call to me, and this is, one is the weird thing. I don't, is I always recently I'm always like depressed in holidays. I was like, why am I depressed in holiday? And I remember they used to call me before every holiday, before every St. Patrick Day, Thanksgiving, whatever, New Year's Eve. It's like, hey, stay alert. A lot of people unfortunately die today, so stay
Mm.
close to the hospital. And now I remember why. But New York is like one of the reasons that even if you are an organ donor, they have to call your family right away. And a
Yeah.
lot of families obviously grieving, so they can't like, they can't give it. And this is one of the things that I talked to a lot of the people that were bringing here, the mayors that were running for mayors and stuff like that, to get that better.
Yeah. We need more idiotic holidays where people drink too much for the people who need organs, right? Like SantaCon, that's a good thing. Christmas never used to be a drinking holiday. Now it is. Maybe it's going to
Yeah.
help the people who need organs. Never
And
thought of that.
and this is one of the things that I try to do when I bring awareness, not only bring awareness to become a donor, is not die. Don't die. You know what I'm saying? Fentanyl, like all these drugs that you take for no reason, and the risk of it. But anyway, so yeah, just wanted to say that. And a lot of the, the people, this is another thing just for the comedy. So I was like, a lot of my friends that I met years ago and we worked together years ago, and this is something special, like Heather, like Wes, so many people, you know, the I didn't connect with them for years, and when that happened, they came back and they were there. So anyway, let's move on to some stuff. So Noam, you interviewing Sam Harris later today without me.
Yeah.
Are you gonna be on his side after what I just said? Oh, you have second thought.
Well, so we were talking a little bit before. So, he's a big critic of radical Islam, whatever, however you
Well,
want to
I would say Islam in general, not just
No, 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 no. Well, you could say that, but that would, he would immediately say no. But all right,
Quite a
you can.
radical stance, Hatem. Mm-hmm.
Um, but he sees Hamas with some justification as kind of a death cult, and in both in what they say and how they treat the fact that they seem to be okay with many of their own people dying because of the notion that they are martyrs going to paradise, right? So if that's not radical Islam and that's mainstream Islam, then I don't mean to be like clever with you, but that's up to you to just explain to us. But that's obviously the type of thing that motivates him. He's not objecting to fasting during Ramadan. He's not objecting to anything
But why
except
did he choose that example to represent Islam, that Hamas with the radical? Because if they
because
were,
there's a war going on in Israel now, and it's the
yeah,
number
but
one
we
issue there.
know, but that war been going on for before that with their own people, with Hamas, with Egypt before that,
Oh,
with
okay,
a lot
okay,
of,
but and I don't expect you to not be defensive about this because obviously you love Islam, and what it means to you is something that is difficult for him to understand. Difficult, that's just human. But he is describing something which is having and has had for a long time now a global impact. And enough people are taken with these ideas that they're wreaking havoc on planet Earth. And he gets a lot of flack for wanting to talk about it, and people are always going to attack him. No, you're not talking about it right. This is just like being anti-black. This is they'll attack him in a million different ways. And he's like, listen, okay, but I just want. How do we talk about this without people attacking me? I'm being Sam Harris now
sure.
because there's something real here. And it seems like the strategy is to avoid the conversation rather than to meet me in the conversation in good faith. So how do you meet him in the conversation in good faith without calling him a bigot? Just forget about all that stuff.
Yeah, I didn't call him anything. I'm
No,
just
no,
saying,
I'm saying without saying he's Islamophobic. This is what he usually. I'm not saying you say, but this is what he
yeah.
faces. But what he's talking about is real, right? You agree it's
What?
real?
Yes, but there's two things that he never talk about. One
Yep.
is
BC, you're doing exactly what I'm saying. Let's not talk about what he's not talking about.
Yeah,
Let's talk
no,
about
what
what he
he's talking
is
about is
talking about.
he's picking and choosing parts and talking about it and not looking at the whole picture.
It's hopeless. Go
No,
ahead. Go
no,
ahead. Go
no. What
ahead.
I'm
Go
saying,
ahead.
and
Forgive
then
me. Go ahead.
I'll
Go
let
ahead.
my,
Go ahead.
I
Go
tell
ahead.
you, like, first of all, he says, like, okay, these guys are radicalized and stuff like that because, well, first of all, the people that radicalized are not that many, according to 1.7 billion people. Second of all, if you say why, how many wars been there, how many people get killed, and those the only people that are there to educate them are Hamas and stuff like that. You or him, not you, like you being Sam Harris. You look at certain group like Hamas, and I want to take that example, and you don't want to take the example of the very people that fight Hamas, that Muslims. Same thing with people that how many Muslims help catch Osama bin Laden or were in the army or in the police and trying to and save and sacrifice their life to do it. He chose to have the dark part of it, and also choose not to look at the why this has happened. For example, the kids that dies right now, and this is I remember what we talked about this. If the world don't help them, what they become when they get bigger. If I have my whole family killed, what am I gonna become when I get bigger? And then I know Mike have that thought, so you wanna.
Well, Harris is, he's practical, but he also is spiritual, or he's an atheist, but he also thinks a lot about the habits of the mind. And he also kind of cuts through claptrap a little bit. And I think he, as a rationalist, looks at this situation and says, well, there are, no matter what percentage of it that is a death cult, it's gotten to large a percentage, and we have to deal with those consequences. And if the thing that's motivating many of these people in a death cult is the religious texts, at least as they interpret them, it's important for us to figure out how they're interpreting them and why. And then he goes further and says, and we're not really talking about a situation like there are still people in the United States who will claim the mantle of Christianity to shoot up an abortion clinic, right? And that happens 2 times a year, let's say. Maybe one is stopped and one's not. And this is like a crazy expression of Christianity that you can't even find in a real church. He points out that whether it's 60% or 40%, or maybe you would argue that it's even less than that, there is a large percentage of Muslims, millions of people who might not want to send their kids to die in a martyrdom exercise, but don't decry it when it happens. And now you all said, Hatem, that there are a lot of reasons for that. Of course there are, but he had just talking about that fact that like basically the entire population of Iran doesn't object to that. And that's what, 70 million people. And
But he
then
doesn't know that. And this is another thing is like, I am the only person that lived there. So I know how people act. I know how people would say like, this is wrong. This is not
yes,
right.
In Egypt, you mean, right?
In Egypt. And
Okay,
a
so
lot of
Egypt's a but so before the show we were talking about polling, and your essential point was, maybe Sam Harris will say the majority of Egyptians applaud suicide bombing or something like that, or the goals of the suicide bombers, and you're saying I live there, I know these people, it's not true, and you can't trust polls. But when given a vote, right, and it wasn't a rigged election, the Muslim Brotherhood did win that one real election that they had in Egypt for a lot of reasons, and for hopelessness, and for a lot of political reasons. But what does the Muslim Brotherhood believe? I mean, that at least is a data point to consider, right?
But then what happened right after? Well, the Brotherhood ran in a certain agenda, and when they said no, that changed. And also, the Brotherhood, the only reason they won because they were the only organized organization in that. And Iran, if you know Iran well, and Iran
but
is
that's like
not
mosques
Persian.
and religion is very organized. I mean, the martyrdom cult is not disorganized, right? It's not like the American Christians.
Was Osama bin Laden a problem in the Middle East before he became a problem with America? Yes, and we tried to fight him, and we were told, "Oh, let democracy be democracy." I mean, this is something with there's a lot of foreign policy involved. There's a lot of war zones. This area been in war.
Look, I want to say something. I this is not limited to this conversation. When I see that somebody has trouble disciplining a conversation to what it is that they want to talk about, I tend to think that they might have be onto something that nobody wants to admit. And Salman Rushdie, the Charlie Hebdo, the Danish cartoonist. We know that these are unique. There's nobody out there afraid to publish a Christian cartoon. As a matter of fact, you have people lauding a crucifix in urine as a great expression of art in the Western world, right? So there's something obviously different. But what you're describing is a de facto, in fact, schism along the lines of Catholics separating from Protestant, but it hasn't been declared. So that both sides are declaring themselves Muslims. But if the people who represented the beliefs which you disassociate yourself from would simply give themselves a new label, and we are now the blah blah blahs, right? A whole new sect of Islam. Then, and it's just in form. It's just a form problem. Then it would be so much more comfortable because then you and I could both attack that group that has this label, right? And that seems to be the obstacle here. But however we want to talk about it, that's what he's saying. There is a group. They're real. They're defined by their beliefs, and the people sympathize, and they are a threat. I mean, they could bring about the apocalypse.
But he doesn't say a group.
Yes,
the whole religion.
No, he doesn't. But he doesn't.
You remember the Belmar interview?
Yeah, I just watched it 5 minutes ago. He never says the whole religion. As a matter of fact, he talks about concentric circles. Exactly what I just described was informed by what I heard him say.
The other thing, when you said like Salman Rushdie, the fatwa that came out, that's all you hear. But there's a lot of fatwas that came says like, no, this is wrong. You don't kill people. You let them between. And I gave you names of people before that's very big in the Middle East, and people don't. It just doesn't sell. It sells more when say, oh, Khomeini made a fatwa about like let's kill Salman Rushdie, while a lot of people saying no. Don't go him. This is between him and God.
But we don't hear about them. In the end, from my point of view as a Israeli adjacent person, the people who discounted what was capable to be done in the name of whatever it is we're talking about underestimated it. And Sam Harris was right. And in the big picture, the people who believed Sam Harris would not be surprised by October 7th. And people like Ben Affleck are backtracking and trying to figure out some new clever argument as to why their worldview can still accept an October 7th without having to change. And that's the bottom line to me.
But okay, and then I see what you're saying, but you make it sound like it's only one thing that needed to change, while also demonstrating in Palestinian needed to change.
No, I'm not making it sound anyway. But go. No? I'm sorry. No, finish. Go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is like there's a lot of things there's a lot of things. There's not one side that was wrong and one side that was right. This has been going on for a long time, and there is a lot of policies that led to this. But to stick with with Sam Harris's, in my opinion, his view is like I see it very against a whole 1.7 billion people, and I think that there is a problem obviously with when I always say that the middleman, the people that read Quran and tell the kids, oh, this is what it means, while it's not what it means. But I never see him try to want to solve this problem by including Muslims in it, or the help of Islam, or help of the people that actually talk about it. His opinion is like, oh, these are animals. He looks down in the way I feel he talks. And it says like, let's work in this together. Let's include, because there's a lot of good Muslims. There's a lot of people that really believe in it. And there's a lot, even if we say it's half, and it's not half, it's much more than that people are good. He never does that. He always want to be like, it's a problem. It's a poison. We need to get rid of it. That's it. That's my problem with it.
All right. So when I post the interview, after I do it with him, I will, I'll, when I tweet or whatever it is, or maybe on our channel for the other podcast, I'll put this conversation, at least this to this degree, up to this point. And then, I'll also afterwards, if you want to record a rebuttal to whatever it is that he turns out to say, we can do that. And then we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Okay. And I am looking at the list of fatwas, and there's a fatwa against ISIS, and a fatwa against terrorism, and a fatwa for peace for humanity. So I guess there's no, it's unlike the Pope speaking ex cathedra. Everyone could make a fatwa, and you sometimes have dueling fatwas. But once you have some of those fatwas out there, the bad fatwas, maybe they get a lot of attention, but they, also inspire people to act on them. That's something of concern.
I mean, yeah, this is human nature. If you look at TV and you look at like one channel saying it's like, oh, look, the weather is beautiful. We're doing climate change. And the other one, there's war. It's like, oh, shit, war. Yeah, So you got to look at the bad stuff.
Yeah.
I
It's
guess.
human nature. Yeah. But the other world religions, the great religions, at least at this point, and they're older than Islam. So maybe that has something to do with it. And geopolitics do. And I'm not even going to say that colonialism doesn't have something to do with it. It's not just my perception. There is more violence being I'll acknowledge there's more violence being incorrectly attributed to and ascribed to the Quranic texts than there is violence attributed to and ascribed to the other equivalent religious texts. And that's a warping of the religion, but it's also a fact.
Their understanding of the verses, like we say. But, again, that's why, like, he never really, challenge real scholars that middle. He would challenge somebody who's very passionate about Islam and defending, but don't have facts, or just didn't live there and they don't understand it.
Look, I've said this before. If I were to simply base my beliefs on the hundreds, and it's not an exaggeration, of Muslim people who I've known and had good relationships with, who work for me, who have been my friends, I would be astounded, to find out what it is that Sam, like I say, what are you talking about? That's what, like, it's completely foreign to me in terms of my own experience, right? I don't know what you guys say privately, but in terms of my experience, no. So I feel your pain to some extent, just because obviously it's true that there is a huge range here, and you in a very normal way don't want it all to be lumped together. Just like I don't want to be lumped in with Ben Gvir and Smotrich. I get it. It's triggering, but I force myself to make allowances when people want to talk about those dudes. And by the way, there is a sin, because they will, bad faith enemies of Israel will try to blow air into the balloon of the existing right-wing crazies who are, I don't want to say they love violence as much as the people we're describing, but they're fucking pretty awful. And people, for their own purposes, will want to pretend that this represents Judaism, this represents Israel. So I push back on that too. So I understand where you're coming from. But there's also an essence of truth that has to be arrived at. And
sure, yeah.
Yeah. And when we see millions of people dying, Gaza is a drop in the bucket compared to the people being killed in the name of Islam.
Well, in the name of the people, the thing that,
in the name of Islam,
it's not in the name of Islam, because people,
when I say in the name of Islam, people who are doing it saying it's in the name of Islam. You could say it's not really Islam, but in their minds, then, it becomes less and less plausible.
It's like January 6th in the name of freedom or democracy,
It was in the name of democracy. Just ask Mike.
That's the thing with Sam Harris. I never see him like, oh, you guys had a problem with that. There's a lot of millions that died before because of bin Laden, and before anything that's done by bin Laden or any terrorist is done in the Middle East before it's done anywhere
else. Let's move on. I just want to say, to be fair to Sam Harris.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. I should have been with you.
I think he's hardly a guy who's coming to this from a bad place. I think he's pretty decent. And
I would like to talk to him. Why don't we bring him here?
Maybe we can arrange that sometime. I'm not good friends with him at all. I'm a little bit more than an acquaintance, but maybe somehow I can make that happen. Coleman is a good friend of his. Sorry,
And
Mike.
it wouldn't surprise me if he has actually done the kind of outreach that you said, Hatem. And so a good avenue of inquiry would be, what is the best way to influence people to actually change minds? You don't want to just speak to the choir, especially you as an atheist, Sam. So maybe there is some sort of engagement. Although I've been reading a lot about their campus groups who bring over moderate Palestinian voices, and certain people who have worked live in the West Bank. I was reading about this guy, and he criticized Israel at this University of Manitoba session, and it was a total shit show. And there is an orthodoxy that is imposed and impressed by some groups like the Society for Justice in Palestine, and they suspended the group who brought this speaker to campus. So my point overall is it might not be as easy to get these moderate voices to engage in dialogue with someone like Sam Harris, these so-called moderate voices.
I think there's a lot, and very famous too. It's just like, who do you look for, and I still believe that any solution in any problem need to involve the people that actually part of it, the people that suffers from it the most. All right, so let's move to something lighter. Trump's comment about Bloodbath, which is
Bloodbath.
I like Noam's tweet about it.
Now, I just want to explain to everybody what just happened there, because it's actually pretty fascinating.
Bath?
He said blood path because Arabic people have trouble saying peas. And he's so obsessed with the P sound. Now when he sees a B, he says P, because it's like overcompensated because he knows whenever he sees
I blame
P.
it colonization. We didn't know the difference between P's and P's.
It's really
wait,
anyway.
Was Saddam Hussein in the Path Party? Or
yeah, he was.
He's a pathist.
Not a pacifist, but yes.
So go ahead. The Bloodbath.
Just like you guys fucking with us in the English language, you have to make tourist and terrorist sounds almost the same. It's like, why are you here for? I'm here for terrorism, tourism. Yeah, I like.
That's right. That's right. It's almost literally a trigger warning when you enter the country and have to talk to the guys at customs. Terrorism. Boom. 10 years in Guantanamo.
I have the entire 2-minute and 56-second excerpt. Do you want me to play it?
Yeah, yes, please. Because I do like your tweet. Yeah.
How do I share my screen here? Screen 1. It's backwards. And oh wait, stop. I didn't.
Yeah, we see it.
No, but I didn't say choose audio,
sound?
right? Yeah. Hold on. Let me do it again.
Bloodbath.
Advanced, share sound, optimize for video clip. Screen 1. Okay, how's that?
Good. All right, here we go.
And the head of the United Auto Workers never probably shook hands with a Republican before. They're destroying. Mexico has taken, over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it. Went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine, all he does is build car manufacturing plants. He's the biggest in the world.
Right. That's basically it. He just continues. So, and by the way, if you look up bloodbath, I didn't even know this, in the Webster's dictionary, one of the definitions is an economic calamity. So that's the case for President Trump. Go ahead.
The case against him would be how he started the entire rally, which is playing the quote unquote hostages of January 6th singing the Star Spangled Banner and saluting. So more than a nod, an explicit endorsement of a lot of these people who were arrested for rioting at the Capitol. So I'll say both things are true. It's absolutely the case that that was in the context of talking about tariffs at the border, but it's also the case that he's really supportive of the January 6th rioters. Can't they both be true?
No, I wouldn't say he's not. Who doesn't know he supports January 6th rioters? The question is, if you could test his brain, do you think when he said bloodbath, he was winking to there's going to be violence in the streets if I'm not elected, or was he just using, it just came to his mind, it's going to be a bloodbath because you've seen the videos on Twitter, like it's a pretty common phrase in exactly the context he used it. It seems unknowable.
I don't know. Maybe he was thinking of Megyn Kelly, right? But so, yeah, you're right. I'll concede. I watched an ABC report which just flat out said that Donald Trump mentioned a bloodbath, and it was in the they played some of his statements beforehand and then went on to speak exactly about January 6th and exactly about unrest in this country and quoting an FBI report. And they absolutely made it sound like the bloodbath was about political violence. However, on the other hand, it is also the case that he has not said anything that is at all condemnatory of the people who did do political violence. So I don't like the news being inaccurate about it, but if the overall accurate impression is that Donald Trump's election would certainly portend or increase the odds of political violence, I think that is a fair
but that's not what listen, in a lot of these cases people always think that I'm trying to defend Trump, but what always has offended me is the press. And I mean, I had to really search for this clip because virtually every clip from every major news network was edited in a way to bring you to the conclusion they wanted to bring you to. Now, that's fucking damaging to the country, and I would only say additionally that nobody in the audience, if you watch when he says the word bloodbath, there's no facial expression or applause that indicated that anybody picked up this kind of call to violence, which you imagine if he said it, they actually would have cheered. That's the kind of crowd he has. They didn't. It's the only reason anybody even noticed it is because his detractors blew it up into something that I think went in one ear and out the other of the Trump supporters. And they do it over and over and over again. And the irony is that they think they're working against him when they're actually helping him.
Yeah.
Because independents like me who don't want to vote for the guy, this infuriates us. It's like, stop leading me by the nose to believe what you want me to believe. You're a threat, and you're a threat to the country. He's a threat to the country. You're a threat to the country. You hounded this guy so much that world leaders, we've discussed this before, world leaders were afraid to have meetings with him because they thought he was a Russian spy and couldn't be trusted. That's what you did to help the country press. You convinced world leaders that our president was a spy, and it wasn't even remotely true. It's like, come on.
I think we live in a world that it's 10-second clips. So when you do take that part out, you know exactly what you're doing. And this is one of the things I'm proud of this podcast is from the beginning. Obviously, we were not for Trump, but always I remember one interview, like there's the guest was a big deal, and he was saying like, oh, Trump cannot read. And then Noam said, and I have that clip still, it's like when you say stuff like that, it just doesn't convince us. It doesn't make us feel good.
Rick Wilson, Rick Wilson is Mike, he is.
Yeah.
He says, yeah, Trump can't read. I'm like, dude, come on. Trump can read. Like, you think you're persuading me when you say Trump can't read? When you tell me Trump can't read, you're telling me not to take seriously anything you're telling me.
And to get to his credit, he agreed with you. He said, "Yeah, you're right."
Yeah. But then he went on to do it the next day on another show.
But that's the thing. Is like when you do clips like that, it's like you have to convince. When you find people lie to you, it helps Trump.
Yes.
While there's facts. So So I don't know. But you know, speaking of Trump, there's this clip. It's not related at all, but I think it's kind of funny that I don't know if you saw this one before. This is how happy he was that he had a Muslim supporter.
I love you. Muslim, and for you all the way. I love you. You're the next president.
He's a Muslim and he's for Trump. You see?
I'm a Muslim for him.
He's a
All
Muslim.
the way. To the White House. All the way. I'm a Muslim. I support this man to the death with my life.
Wasn't that Uncle Leo from Seinfeld?
Looks like him.
And
Listen,
do you notice that Trump says Muslim exactly like Bernie Sanders says Muslim? Is this like a New York septuagenarian thing? Bernie's 80. I've never heard anyone say Muslim.
But this shows you how Trump is like, oh, he likes me. I like Muslims.
That's all it is.
there he is. There's my African American. Does he remember that? But listen, as Hatem will tell you, Arabic people are not that anti-Trump and never have been. Even through the Muslim ban, I was shocked to see it. A lot of Arabs like, I don't know. He kind of has a point, right,
Yeah.
Hatem?
Yes, yes. I think a lot of people do, and I think now, obviously, a lot of people are becoming more anti-Biden. Like I cannot get myself to vote to Biden, but you know, but I'm not voting for Trump either. So you know, I don't know. I sent you guys a video of this illegal immigrant that CNN interviewed.
Not illegal immigrant, undocumented worker. I'm just protecting you. Go ahead.
Well, I can say it because I was no. Okay. So
well, when you were undocumented back then, they were illegal.
When?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, like why
don't they go by if you have an American heart, you're an American?
That's a good point.
Yeah, yeah, we should have it. I mean, I am an American citizen, just to
know,
to clarify. So yeah, so they had this interview on CNN that I send you the video, and the guy, he's undocumented and said he will vote for Trump. He liked Trump more. You know, it's all that. So let's talk about the immigration and all the you know, the ban in Texas thing. Mike, what do you think of that? Is it extreme? Is it like, what do you think?
I think that there's a constitutional interpretation that these state laws aren't working very hard to get around. And I don't know if it solves the problems, but there are a lot of portions of the Constitution correctly interpreted which wouldn't solve our short-term problems. Everyone is kind of right in this, that they all have their own solutions that, if perfectly implemented, would not solve, but would bring down the problems a lot. Joe Biden talking about, you know, if you gave us more authorization for judges, we'd process all these claims much more efficiently. That's true, but the Republicans won't. And the Republicans talking about their bill, that if you gave us all this money for law enforcement and more walls, that we'd bring down immigration a lot. They're both true, but since they won't compromise, neither side will compromise. I think the Democrats will compromise more. It does convince me that a solution is not really what most of our leaders want, an actual solution where they lose face or maybe don't get all of what they want, right? I mean, Trump said this, let's keep it alive as an election issue. And Senator Langford almost cried or mouthed, he's right, during the State of the Union, like it was a hostage video. So it's extremely dispiriting. I think it's one of those things that if we were all pulling in the right direction, we still wouldn't be able to solve it. But since we're not, there's no real hope or light for at the end of the tunnel for a real solution.
Noam, what do you think? And before that, I want to ask you also, I could always swear that you said a while ago that New York and stuff, they talk all this shit, but if those numbers were in New York, things would have been different. And it is.
I said that for years. I said about the people on border towns. I said, like, why, you know, do you have any idea what it's like to live? People just assumed it was racism. And I said, well, I don't think people take that much intensity out of their day just because they're racist. It probably has an impact on them. Anyway, so I don't really know about this stuff. I know that if I was in a community that was, you know, really being negatively impacted by a problem and the federal government wasn't handling it, I would support my leaders pushing their own solution to the limit of the law until the authorities stepped in and said, no, you're going too far. You can't do this. Let the courts tell them to stop if what they're doing is in good faith. If what they're doing is in bad faith, then I don't support them. I would just say that, now this is where I do get, I don't know. So Trump says, keep it alive as an election issue, which is an outrageous thing to say. It's an outrageous thing to say. However, in my opinion, he says out loud what generations of politicians have known. You just don't say that out loud. So is it outrageous? I mean, do you really think that every politician hasn't kept things alive as an election issue?
Nixon kept the Vietnam War going to help his election.
So I was just reading. I was having a fight with our friend Fred Kaplan, and I was just reading Bob Gates's, the former defense secretary under Bush and Obama, memoir, and he says that Biden didn't want to go to get bin Laden because of political reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And he made, I tweeted, there were a few references to policies that seemed to be in the interest of the United States of America, that Biden put politics first. So it's really, let's keep it as election issue, or let's worry about, we may get him, but the election issue is more important, however you want to do it. I just think it's disgusting that that's the way a system is, but politics is just disgusting, so.
Yeah, but James Langford's a politician. Kirsten Sinema is a politician, or will be for a few more months. Chris Murphy's a politician. They're all politicians. They all know that there's an election, and maybe there are some forces who would like to not solve an intractable issue. I don't think that Langford is totally unsophisticated, that he didn't know that would be a possibility. And he's not trying to solve it just for the good of the country, although that's the majority. He has his own political reasons that if there is a solution and Republicans are part of the solution, things that could help the Republicans too, right? Yeah. Why is it necessarily the case that Donald Trump needs to thwart this possible help rather than put all his effort behind it and say, see, I'm part of the solution on the border? And then he also has his other, whole raft of policies where he contrasts himself with the Democrats. And I do think that all these people in northeastern cities and Denver and Chicago actually experiencing it might be more open. So I named 2 cities where the state will never vote Republican, and Colorado is pretty well gone too. But there is the possibility that many swing voters would be more predisposed to Donald Trump if he both said, I believe in this compromise immigration bill because I believe in solutions, and I'm even going to go further. He's kind of doing that with abortion, right? He isn't saying keep it alive as an issue. I guess he discerns that abortion's a bad issue for him, but he's showing that he could be a compromiser and wants to show he can be a compromiser and get credit for the compromise. I think it is possible. It would have been possible. There's another way for him to have played the bill differently that actually could have worked for him too.
I agree with you. Often, and I see it on both sides, they appear to have made a calculation, and I always say to myself, is that really the right calculation? It seems like they should be trying to play for the center more. Biden, when certain things he did, and Trump too. So you're right.
Yeah. And Trump would defang so many of the criticisms of him from Democrats that he's only part of the problem. Look, I'm definitely part of the solution. And then he also knows, and this is a great thing that David Leonhardt says in his book where he analyzes politics. He says that most people think the Democrats' policy on immigration is more is good, less is racist. Right. And I do think that there's a lot of swing voters who look at the Democrats and say, is that really all you got on immigration? Or definitely look at the left wing of the Democratic Party. I don't know if it'll hurt Biden, but it'll hurt a lot of Democrats in local elections. I think combining all that, there's a path forward for a Republican to actually have some decent conservative solutions on immigration and get credit for it by the electorate.
Yeah, I agree with you. But, in the end, they are making their calculations right or wrong. And they do. Look at Schumer. Made his calculation somehow to throw Israel, sort of under the bus as he did. I don't believe that was an act of principle. This was an act. He spoke to the president. He would never dare to do something like that without consultation with the White House. And they decided, for whatever reason, that this was the political move to make.
That was actually my next topic. Yeah,
clearly it was. It's disheartening. Anyway, that's all I got to say about it. As far as immigration goes, that just as a side issue, there's a lot of controversy. Elon Musk has said Democrats do it because they like the voters, because they foresee that it will help them. I think he's right about that. I think that they see gold in them dar hills. Now maybe they're realizing it's not quite the case, and maybe that's even why they're becoming a little more flexible on immigration. Yes, these illegal people are not undocumented people are not voters, but their kids are going to be voters, and the people who care about them are voters, and they will eventually, some percentage of them will obviously get some sort of amnesty. This won't go on forever, and they'll be voters. And the Democrats thought there were only pros in this and no cons. Now I think they're seeing that the Hispanic population maybe can't be counted on in the same ways they expected, and that might actually make them more reasonable.
Yeah.
And by the way, I just want to say, I don't even know where I stand on immigration, because I do feel the border has to be controlled. But the counterfactual of like not having immigrants or not having undocumented immigrants, that's not really practical. We need the people. So I don't even know where I stand on it, but I always stand for orderly process.
When did we start changing why is illegal become a bad word now? I don't get it.
It's kind of what we were talking about before, because it's a way of sidetracking an argument to start attacking the way people are talking about it. You see it over and over, in my opinion. Oh, we lost Mike. He was offended.
Oh, Mike, you there? Oh,
Yeah.
His camera went. There.
Yeah.
You switched to a different camera or something.
I didn't mean
I see under your. Oh, okay. So go ahead. What do you want? What's the next topic?
Yeah, well, the next topic. We changed it because of activists within the Democratic Party. They fight word wars. They think word wars are the ones that they can win. And I say Democratic Party, but I mean progressives and certain progressives who wouldn't even deign to vote for a Democrat. So they know they can apply pressure and get people to change their language, because these are the only victories that are possible. And they're fun. And they're fun to cast out apostates if you say the wrong thing.
People are not illegal. Oh, it's such a powerful argument.
Guys are arrested for operating an illegal chop shop, right? Or an illegal dentistry. I'm not saying that people are illegals. If you could be an illegal dentist and an illegal immigrant. Oh, sorry. You'd be an I loved undocumented workers. Like they just left their papers home.
Can I say, like, from my point of view, like, illegal sounds cool. Like, I want to be illegal. I don't really want to be undocumented. It's like uneducated.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I'm not sufficiently part of the bureaucracy. It's like a few of these new euphemisms that don't even engender more sympathy, like unhoused versus homeless. Why? Oh, I didn't realize they were without a home. They were unhoused. That's not inherently more sympathetic. It's just a different word, because in the word wars, these are the victories that can be won.
It's crazy. What's your thoughts on Schumer's Mike? I know Noam didn't.
I mean, I understand my wife, who doesn't follow stuff that closely, so she has a very like naive take on things sometimes. Like she couldn't quite, and she's of color, and she'll say, "I'm colored." I'm like, "No, sweetheart, you're a person of color. You're not colored." And she's like, "What's the difference?" And you have to explain the difference, but there's no common sense difference, So like, it's a lot of these things. Like, you're changing the words. I understand why they wanted to disassociate everything from the word colored, because of the history of Jim Crow and all that was the word. But then, whatever.
I don't know if you saw this New York Times thing. Which America do you want? Zero immigration? Do you see this article at the Times about like what's to expect from historic right here? I think I always say that I agree with Noam. I think that this country is built on immigration, and immigrants. But it should
that's not my argument that it's built on immigrants.
No, I know, no, but I'm saying like no, I'm adding that, but I agree with you on the part that immigration are important, but the border should be controlled. Especially if they managed to get in.
I just want to say, first of all, Mike actually touched on an important point, because you could say it was built on Europeans. This country's built on Europeans. But my point is that demographics being what they are, with people having fewer and fewer children, we need the workers. And the second if we were actually to be able to shut down the border immediately Republicans would be screaming, "We need labor, we need labor. We have nobody to work." So, you have to be realistic. And so I'm for it because it's at this point in time good for the country. There might be another time when it might not be good for the country. I don't care that it was built on immigrants. I want what's best for America.
Yeah, and also I think that the trends that are annoying and bothering and frightening Democrats of immigrants actually being open to voting Republican, that is actually a great argument for immigration, because if all immigration was going to do was fundamentally change the character of America, like some of these very right-wing think tanks would have you believe, and not buy into, whatever their ideal is of the American dream, you wouldn't see that effect. But all these immigrants are coming in, all these Hispanic immigrants, mostly Latino Hispanic immigrants, are also true of the Asian immigrants, and they're not changing things. They're buying into Republicanism, or they're buying into the basic notions of let's not have runaway crime and let's have a decent economy. I think that one guy that you sent me, who is, I guess, was identified as an undocumented immigrant, who would say, yeah, I'm undocumented, but he would say I'm illegal, but I would vote for Trump. I think he mistakes Trump's benefit to the economy overall, but it doesn't make me shake my head and say, how could anyone do that? It gives me a lot of hope, saying these people come in and they become American, and have the kind of stupid American views that Republicans are always better for the economy, even when it's not true. Good.
Let me ask you a question, Mike. I might ask Sam later. Do you think that immigration, at least in the short term or medium term, has changed the nature of America in the following sense? The range of beliefs and cultures and the lack of any clear majority have made it much more difficult for America to speak with one voice than it once was able to. To get a country that has a very important Muslim vote and a very important Hispanic vote and a very important Jewish vote, or whatever it is, to agree on certain policies that they can all get behind it's quite different than it was in the past, when America was 90% white. Mm-hmm. And everybody knew the rules, and and you were here, and you were lucky to be here, and you sucked it up no matter what. Every Arab, there was a time 30 years ago where every Arabic person, he never even fantasized that American policy in Israel was something he was going to be able to have an impact on. So he probably didn't even, and both candidates supported it, and that's the way it was. Yeah. Now you feel like you're coming apart, and there is no possible way to reconcile the various populations we have. That's what it feels like. I don't know if it's true.
Right. So you're saying there was once the ideal of the melting pot that was taught as a virtue in school, and then it became literally on the list of microaggressions to talk about America as the melting pot. And we have fractured, but I don't think it's because of immigration. In fact, not only would I put immigration far down on the list, it might be a countervailing force. I mean, I think we fractured mostly because of media, but also because of demographics. We are going to be majority, minority, or whatever the perhaps non-offensive phrase for that is. So the world is fracturing. We have silos of information. And I do think, though, that a lot of immigrants do come in, and sometimes the most patriotic people are the most recent Americans. I find that to be true. I am much more worried about the radicalization of not just our colleges, but teaching in the public schools in California, going to this, it's mandated that they teach ethnic studies in California, which, chef's kiss, they should. But the way they're doing it, and Newsom had to veto the first bill, and they get in the second bill, and they don't just teach, here's the glorious story of the Asians in California or the Latinos in California. They teach it in terms of oppression, and in terms of everything we're worried about, like with CRT and Marxism. So that's the fracturing. That's where the fracturing comes from. I think a hardworking person who comes from a poorer area and becomes rich in America and owns that guy's auto body shop and says, I would vote for Trump, that's the good thing.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty persuasive argument you just made.
But there's one other thing, how You ever see this or hear the concept? And there was, I think, a PBS story about how the Irish became white and how the Italians became white and how the Jews became white. I think that's gonna happen and is happening with the Hispanics. So in 1950, a pollster would talk about the Italian vote, and now I've almost never seen it broken out. And I think in 2050, the Hispanic vote will just be, absorbed into the culture.
Well, I'm so jaded, and I think but I have some confidence in the wisdom of being jaded. Every one of those articles about what the Irish were like, what the Italians were like, I know very well that these articles are created in the service of this agenda of proving a point based vis-a-vis today's America. I don't trust them to give an accurate feel for what it was like back then. In the same way that when people describe what it was like to live in New York in the 90s during the height of the crack epidemic, and they want to get me to believe, no, crack was just the same as cocaine, and no, I lived through it. You're just trying to mold a point here. You don't fucking have any idea of what the past was like, and I am just skeptical of those arguments. Whatever I know there's signs Irish need not apply. I know these things are true, but the essence of what that was really like, I don't trust some Columbia Journalism School reporter.
Wait, what's your suspicion? What do you think what narrative are they trying to get us to buy by talking about that?
That people once didn't consider these people white, so therefore people will consider these people white, that this is just something that we pass through. I don't believe that Italians and Irish were ever viewed as differently as it's just human nature, as blacks and Chinese or whatever it is. I'm not defending those. Obviously, I would like everybody to be seen exactly the same. I just don't believe it was. But can I wait just before we say that, because I want to, I guess, hung up on that. That was kind of a tangent. It's an interesting thought experiment to imagine how America would react to 9/11 if it were to happen today, as opposed to 2001, and what those differences would be. I imagine we'd see a lot more reverend rights, maybe even a big segment of Democratic Party progressives. What do you think?
I think that it would be, I've thought of that. And I actually asked ChatGPT, I gave it some prompts to try to write some historical fiction. And one of the ones was the element I always wanted to have, because this would happen. They'd be tearing down the posters of the missing people at the World Trade Center, just as they tore down the posters of the Israeli hostages. Some people would be doing that, which is, of course, unthinkable. On September 20th, 2001, anyone in New York City tearing down posters. It's crazy. And because we're fractured and there'd be some version of Marxist Twitter, blah, blah, blahing about it. There was some version of PBS and NPR that immediately elevated Noam Chomsky and did these specials on what does it mean to be an empire. But what I think would really happen is America would look a lot like Israel does right now, that there'd be general agreement of purpose. There'd be some sort of loud but ignored minority, and we'd probably prosecute the wars for good and ill exactly as we did. I think.
I think these things like 9/11 and COVID and these things unite the country. I see it more as even I remember being Muslim and being Arabic, and during that time I was okay with people being racist. I understood it, and I was like, they have a right to it, and I get it. I wasn't mad. It's my part as America to take it. You know what I'm saying? Because this is what happened. So I think more people will be doing disasters like this closer than further out. But,
I was when you said more people come together in COVID, I had this thought, and I haven't developed it anywhere. But
the beginning of COVID, not
that is true. And clapping for the first responders and just the general human nature of let's get through this. And then within months, we started cracking up over things like masks and lockdowns.
I gotta tell you a dumb story about after you're done about the clapping.
But what I was thinking is, like I've heard it argued that can you believe this cloth, this piece of material became a totem in the culture wars? Can you believe that the parties organized around that and we split over whether to wear the mask? And of course I would. Of course I could. That's exactly the things about wearing a mask are exactly in line with things that Republicans talk about freedom and things that Democrats talk about collective responsibility, and how Democrats look down on Republicans for not being sufficiently intellectual, and how Republicans resent that when Democrats get way over their skis. Like, it was inevitable. And this was my thought, though, my more profound thought. There's no way out of it, but it's just low-level nonsense. And the real story of COVID was not people yelling at each other about masks. It's the miracle of technology. So what I think it is, I'm not being optimistic or pessimistic. I think the reality that we live in is we will sociologically engage in time-wasting nonsense, and it is technology that will be the important thing that will define our civilizations. And the pessimistic thing about it is very few people control the technology, and no one even understands how it works. But we do live in this amazing technological age, and the technology overrides all else, and everything else is basically entertainment, I guess.
But I think in the beginning of COVID, like I saw the country, coming together in a way, like clapping first responder, being like, okay, we're in this together. You see the people looking at each other, helping. Like it was after that, I think it's the human nature that we look for what divide us rather than bring us in. So after like a few weeks, we'll be, but I tell you a funny story.
But I also think that in the history of plagues, when you write this story with the newspaper from 1,000 years from now, when this gets one sentence, is this was the first plague in which a cure was invented so quickly that very few people actually succumbed. That's the actual story.
Yeah, yeah. And I saw people, obviously I was in the hospital at that time. I saw how many people like were working around the clock trying infection disease doctors and and all that, and just trying to get stuff done, But tell
That's
you
a question. Oh, tell you a funny story. Go ahead.
About the clapping of the first responder, at 7 o'clock and at night they used to. My dumb brother, it was the first day of Ramadan and he's going to get food at 7 o'clock and people are clapping and he's like, "Oh, this country is beautiful." They
Are we living in the most profound? This is a naive question. I don't know my history well enough. Are we living in the most profound technological age? Did other innovations like manufacturing, farm innovation, whatever, did they have an even more profound effect on day-to-day life than anything we're living through?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this argued that if you take someone born, there are certain years, before the loom and the steam engine, and then the 20 years after, the unbelievable change in their lives can hardly be appreciated. Whereas in the age we're living in now, yeah, computers, but lifespan has increased 5 years. Across continental flight hasn't gotten any faster. I've heard that argument.
Yeah.
I think as a baseline, like as a percentage of change of the baseline, it is true, but I also think that the technology is more profound and therefore it's going to affect us more than it ever has before. So, like maybe as a percentage of what we were 3 years ago, it's not that much higher, but just as a absolute level, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, we may overrate our own amazement. Like a couple things, like I can remember I lived through the moon landing. I mean, there was nothing more amazing than landing on the moon like that. That was just friggin' amazing. Or imagine what it was like when the nuclear bomb was developed. And also I noticed, this is just kind of related, that, and we all lived through this. There was a time when every new level of special effects in a movie was huge. When Terminator 2 came out and they had that liquefying metal thing, like, holy there is literally nothing my kids could now see on screen that would even make them raise an eyebrow. Like, it's very interesting. It's done. Like, anything they see is like, oh yeah, whatever. Like everything.
Jurassic Park for me. Everyone just went because can you believe they rendered dinosaurs that look like dinosaurs?
Yeah, it has zero mileage from special effects anymore, at least right now. And The Matrix, that's slow motion. Like, it's just So, we're just getting inured to it. Anyway,
But you do think that there's a lot of technology in a regular basis that makes us saves us a lot of time as humans, like with Venmo, with bank account, with all this, gives you more time to be bored. So you expect more, Just like you
I,
said during COVID, during COVID, you said the best thing about COVID is like you're never gonna go and have a meeting with your accountant. You're just gonna Zoom, that saves a lot of time.
I'm going to say that unless this all translates into very important medical innovations, which I expect it will, I would trade what I have now, as much as I love for the kind of more relaxed life that I had not so long ago. I would trade it for the idea that if something came out in the paper that was awful, it went into the garbage can and nobody could just look it up and throw it in your face forever. I adore, being able to download. I don't get, there's not like there's nothing on both sides of the ledger, but in general, I don't think people are happier now because of the technology, but if we can live much longer, I'd be happy with that. Also, it's a moving target. Things may come around, but
yeah. It's it's perennial. In Inherit the Wind, the stand-in for Clarence Darrow talked about technology and said, let me try to remember it. I can give you the airplane, but the clouds will stink of gasoline and the birds will lose their wonder. And he talked about, I can give you the telephone, but it will impinge I forgot what his phrase was, but the joy and the mystery of distance. Everything always comes with a trade-off. And that's true, the always ever thus argument. But the question is, were things better? Was there a golden age, a time during our lifetime that we're not just nostalgic about?
yes.
And we're slightly different ages. We're 10 years apart, I think. Noam, you and
I'm
I.
62. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 52. Hatem, how old are you?
So I'm 61. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
22.
Hatem.
Yeah. So I would trade it for the Clinton era. To me, it's the late 90s were somewhat golden agey.
I remember, even like the little things like receiving a letter. You remember that thing? Not like now you only receive whatever junk mail, but stuff like that. But that's the thing is like with more technology, you expect things, you have more time, you become more bored. Which take us to another topic, or last maybe the ban of TikTok. Thoughts on that? Is it gonna happen? Is it a political move? Is it, I'm not in control. It's not an American company, so it's not gonna go. What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, inform me, Mike, because I probably want to talk to Sam about this too, and I don't know a goddamn thing about it.
I think it will happen because it's not really a ban. It's just a compelled sale where, yep.
Wait, what the hell happened here? Where the fuck is this? It's not in this one. I literally don't see an open browser here.
Did you lose us?
Are you there?
Oh, I know why. I know. Hold on. It's gonna. I got it. Sorry. Go ahead. Cut that out, Hatem. Go ahead.
Okay.
That was weird.
Good note.
If my wife had done that, I'd be totally exasperated with her by now. Go ahead.
I think it will happen. It passed pretty easily. So
the ban will happen.
Yeah, because it's not really a ban, right? It's a compelled sale where the people who own it in China make their money. And so what's the Chinese government's choice? And what's the constituency other than Jamal Bowman and a few, millionaires who do donate?
So you do think it's a Chinese company?
Well, of course it's a Chinese company.
Okay.
And of course they screw with the algorithm. And it would be crazy. China would never allow this to happen the other way around. They would never allow a United States company to affect the opinions of their children as the Chinese have. So, yeah, I think it's going to happen, but I also don't think it'll be that transformative, right? TikTok, there are a couple complaints about TikTok, and the ones that the Congress is acting on is the Chinese control, the ones where it has so much in common with Instagram and Reels and all that. That's not going to be affected at all by the change in ownership. I wouldn't guess.
What if they don't sell?
I don't understand why we would allow the Chinese to monitor us and have all this information on us.
No, but I'm saying they can be like, we're not selling to the United States and ban it from the United States, but it's going to be big in the rest of the world, which is people going to find a way to download it anyway. And
I don't understand why the EU would allow that to happen. The Chinese could do that, but the history shows that when other apps of similar ilk have been banned, something has come up to take its place, right? First it was a Vine, then there was a TikTok, and next there'll be a
You know, the Egyptian revolution happened because I don't know if you know that story, is because the government decided to cut all social media that day so people don't communicate. So everybody went in the street, and that what happened. You know, I don't think banning is a good thing. You know, I don't think, you know, controlling is a good thing. That's one of the reasons we love this country. You know, Noam, what do you think?
Well, I don't like that there's a direct pipeline from the Chinese government to my daughter's brain at a time when I kind of foresee a psychological war against fragile Jewish psychology. But what would be the theory that I could accept? So the First Amendment normally the law requires the least restrictive action to handle a problem, but products that are aimed at children and speech with regards to children are a regulatable area. And clearly, this is a product which we're very concerned about how it's marketed to children. So I would think that maybe the legal way to do it would be to, it's probably not possible, require TikTok to have protections that children can't get on there without permission or without their parents' permission, or the Congress could pass a law saying that somebody under a particular age can't use this product. I don't know.
What about Instagram
That's
and
probably all
Facebook?
just nonsense if you really think about it practically. But I don't like the idea of them banning a product. Whether the Saudis going to buy it, can know it. Well, I don't know where this ends, but I don't. I have to admit, as much of a free speech First Amendment guy I am, I can't pretend that this isn't a real problem. Every friggin' kid has TikTok, and the Chinese government is seeing to it that they are fed a certain diet. And, who can say that doesn't matter?
What about Instagram and Facebook? Like, the kids still have it. Is it the problem just that the kids have access to this in general, social media?
It
Or
seems
just
to be that
specifically?
TikTok is more motivated, has more of an agenda. At least that's what I hear. I'm not on TikTok. I don't know. What do you say, Mike?
Oh, you are in TikTok.
No.
There's a lot of clips of you on TikTok. I can tell you that.
So I'm borrowing this point. It's Matt Iglesias or Noah Smith or someone I read. And he said if it was the 1970s and big TV stations of the equivalent mind share that TikTok has, and the announcement was we're going to sell these stations to the Russians, no one would even bring that up as a possibility. Every senator from Ted Kennedy to Strom Thurmond would get together and say, you're absolutely not selling to the Russians. Point two, if TikTok existed as a US company and they were going to sell to the Chinese, they would not allow that sale. So given those two, absolutely, I think, undeniable set of facts, it makes perfect sense to deny the Chinese from having this. It's not the case where you could say, oh, the Chinese, there's no effect. We've put the TikTok algorithm next to the Instagram algorithm. We see no difference. The researchers who've done this, the Washington Post did a very good story on this. The hashtags pro-Palestine, just take one area, and the anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian content on TikTok is something like 20-1 what the equivalents are in the other social media apps. Now, they're more pro-Palestinian, because young people are more pro-Palestinian. And that's if the algorithm were just allowed to feed users what they would naturally want. But when the Chinese control it, it becomes, 100-1 instead of 3-1.
Now, what about Glenn Greenwald's argument that lo and behold, this only became an issue when the Jews realized that it was bad for Israel?
Well, I mean, that's not true. Donald Trump started talking about banning TikTok when he was in office.
Right. But then recently, like the last 3 weeks, it just whooshed up again and nobody saw it coming, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there are a whole lot of reasons why things get on the agenda. And by the way, pro-Israeli government interference, including by Democrats and Republicans working together, we don't see that in the actual funding of Israel debates. We don't see that in what Chuck Schumer's saying. Why are we seeing this weird double bank shot with TikTok? I mean, I think Glenn's wrong about that. Those are two things that happened.
But if you have one outlet of media, of social media controlled by, one country, I mean, I feel the benefit of having different countries. And are we getting, like, what bothers me is, like, why can't we just invent something better? You know, like, so now is anything better than what we have, we're gonna ban? You know what I'm saying?
We network effects. It's just a lot of things we never thought of when we there's a lot that are confounding a lot of our principles. The fact that certain sites become the place that everybody has to go to, and you can't really have 3 TikToks because and it upends a lot of the theories that were relied on. Well, you open a competitor.
No, but I
And
remember
usually
your
you can open a
argument.
competitor, but you can't really that easily open a competitor sometimes at TikTok. I don't know.
I remember your argument a long time ago. Like, I don't know if you remember that, years ago, when you said, like, we used to invent shit first. We used to do things first, you know?
Well,
By
that's
we, I
true.
mean the United
But we
States.
still do that. We're much more inventive. It's
But I'm
not that-
saying, like,
what did the
if-
Chinese Vine was TikTok before TikTok.
But let's admit that social media, they're better in this, that
No,
at
it's
TikTok.
just TikTok.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what I'm saying.
for
In
kids.
TikTok versus Facebook and the rest of the stuff in social media, in the entertainment world, they won that right now. So why can't we think of something better, you know?
We
American
can,
Ben.
but I'm sorry, Mike, but there is a fundamental issue, which is difficult to deal with, is that the Chinese government, I presume this is true, has, as I said, they have a pathway into the brains of our kids, and they are strategizing how to use that for geopolitical advantages.
So
And we can't just pretend it's not true. We need mature people to say yes, but this is true. And now how do we deal with that? As they use the trite thing, the Constitution is not a suicide pact, and we have to grow up. And I don't know the answer.
No, I agree with you. But on the other flip hand, when Facebook and Instagram were tried to be banned in, say, Middle East or in China, a place like that, people was like, oh, those barbaric people, they just don't want freedom and open. So
they're trying to ban information. It's a little different. But anyway, go ahead, Mike. What do you want to say?
Oh, what I wanted to say was that one reason why TikTok has an advantage over Facebook is, as much as Elon Musk is pilloried, he still feels that he has to, acquiesce to some of the pressures of American governance, and TikTok doesn't. So if the algorithm is just allowed to run unfettered, right, as the Chinese have run it, it's going to, especially when the algorithm is only optimized for attention, it's going to have a little bit of an advantage.
And it's kids. I mean, it's kids. They're just different. They're the most unsophisticated, and they're the most prone to peer pressure. And I shudder to think how my daughter is really processing what's going on in Israel and what it means to be Jewish. And I mean, what notions of collective guilt that adults can't even be reliable on. And there's no way I can really know how this is affecting her and how it might affect her for life. And it's being fed by a bad faith actor who wants that outcome for her. Yeah.
But I feel, I understand and I agree with you, but also I feel like it's another outlet for people to maybe post stuff that they were be banned for Facebook or Instagram or YouTube if they wanted to post, you know. But on the other hand, another side of this, I like banning TikTok for comedy. I don't know if you agree or not, but because all these, I'm a comedian now because I'm famous on TikTok, and the crowd work and all that shit that has nothing to do with stand-up comedy, like that part of it, I'm very happy about.
You're not serious, are you?
I'm serious.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
How many people that they think they have you been to? I have this this person, I'm not gonna mention their name, very famous in TikTok, and they decided that they can do a comedy show. They're gonna be a comedian, and literally before the show, I was like, "What I'm gonna talk about?"
Rich Voss?
No, but I mean, you know what? You don't agree that a lot of TikTok comics that you put them on the stage and they're not funny at all?
Yes, but I'm not gonna. It's not a reason to ban TikTok.
No, but I'm saying I'm happy if TikTok get banned just for the comedy reason. But other than stuff, I like the fact that there's different outlets where you can post.
What you need to ask yourself is how you'd feel about this if the Chinese government was trying to tell everybody to take Israel's side.
Well, I mean, that's what the rest of the stuff are doing. Instagram and Facebook. So I feel fine. I'm still on Instagram. You know,
oh yeah, All the
But
there's a lot of pro-Israel content on Facebook.
My
I
wife
mean,
is
I guess
responsible.
I guess
Yeah.
it depends on your algorithm. So I'm friends with Noam, so I get a lot of this shit. But
Yeah.
I do. All right. I think we're done. Mike, anything else you want to talk about? Anything else on your mind, issue
Yeah,
wise? Any hot
there was,
takes?
yeah, very hot. There was one other thing about TikTok, but it's not about a ban or China. I think it was Ted Goya, and he was writing about how we don't really live in an age of entertainment where people think about the ways of entrancing us or ensorceling us with content, with stories, with I'm not even going anything deep. I'm just saying a vaudeville show, right? People who put a lot of time and effort into delivering entertainment and then an audience who knows they're being entertained. He says that we're essentially bargaining away our attention for some very addictive entertainment like substance. And it's kind of even, I know that there's been comic books had congressional hearings and TV shows were decried as the boob tube, and every form of entertainment that comes along has been said to be some sort of death knell of attention spans, let's say. But with TikTok and these serving up of 25 and 30-second snippets and just scrolling, so you feel bad about yourself, you really can't control it. It is a different form of attention and entertainment than anything that's ever been before. And as two people in the attention and entertainment business who are not against new forms of technology, I wonder if you each identify with that argument.
I kind of agree with you because you don't give a chance to anything. Like now, I watch a movie or I watch a something. It's like, oh my god, it's too long. If it doesn't grab my attention right away, and it could be a great story. When I give it like time, I'll be like, oh my god, this is something long. And this is imagine somebody who grew up on TikTok or that's all they do. They're
Yeah.
not gonna give a chance to anything, even like what we talked about earlier with the bloodbath comment. People watch that clip and that's it. The only person, that's why I wanted to bring it when I saw Noam's tweet. He's the only person that saw posting the whole video,
Yeah.
and it took me a while to even go through it. So that's what I think. I think it's hurting the other arts, and just being patient and rewarding yourself about learning and stuff.
That's just to frame it correctly. Goya has this diagram. It's a little fish called art and a bigger fish called entertainment. And what he says the TikTokification is this giant whale called distraction. So it's not highbrow, lowbrow. It's a whole different thing. And now we're just in a distraction age as opposed to an entertainment, even entertainment good or bad age.
I agree. I mean, we had talked about this years ago. We're at the point now where we're inventing experiences which our evolution didn't react to. Our natural selection did not take place in the face of the kind of things we're inventing for ourselves to go through. And we don't really know how it affects us or how we can handle it. The volume of information, all of it. It's but I know that people say when the printing press was invented, people were freaking out and they got used to it. Humans do
Yeah.
that's one of the amazing things about human beings is this ability to get used to things, temperature, whatever, anything. You just get used to it, and culturally we get used to it. And I think that's my reason for optimism, and that we'll just get used to it and we'll learn to roll our eyes. We're already seeing it. Things that used to upset us are like, oh, another guy on TikTok going viral for saying blah, 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 So, yeah, we'll see. But I don't want to be dismissive of anything. We don't know. I know when I see an old movie from the 70s, I can't believe how leisurely the pace was.
Yeah.
It's really something. My kids will not sit through an old movie.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, if you can follow us on TikTok, you can, Mike, you want to share with people can follow you on TikTok or all that? Thank you so much.
I literally have not only do I have no TikTok presence, I can't even watch most of the TikTokeries because I refuse to sign up. I have bought the Chinese threat that much. I will not even have a TikTok account.
Well,
But I
listen,
mean,
well, I just want to say something just to be clear. There's a tremendous democratization of creativity here, where people all over the world are able to distribute their clever things to the entire planet. And many, many, many really creative people are having an impact and are entertaining the world that would have never been heard from on TikTok and on various things. I'm always like astonished at how clever people are and how these people would have never been heard from, and they're influential, and then other people imitate them. It's there's all that which sounds so exciting and so awesome. It's the downsides which I'm trying to come to terms with. But
I'm more pro gatekeeper, by the way, in all aspects of culture. And I think that if you look at all these other cultures, the big radio stars, many of the great ones became TV stars, or, not all the silent movie stars became talking movie stars, but a bunch did. But with weird thing with YouTube is I think there's been no crossover. I think no one has been identified as the breakout YouTube star has been able to actually be a star. And now maybe we're going to see it with
Justin
Mr.
Bieber.
Beast. Well, he has such fundamental skills and talent. And, if you gotta think that if YouTube didn't exist, this kid, by the old methods of the A&R guy from the music company, would have been identified. So there is something a little bit different. I'm absolutely, again, always ever thus. And we had people, Neil Postman, writing about amusing ourselves to death. And so these worries have always been with us. Habituation is a constant of the human condition. But also it's important to say, sometimes there are changes. And I'm not saying that we're just going to go over the cliff and calamity is right around the corner. But there really sometimes are technologies and media with significant changes that do have an effect that isn't the same effect as the always ever thus worry.
And there's some useful, especially like smart people and politicians and stuff like that in TikTok, that you can get educated in like a little time. My only problem with it is like misinformation, people taking clips and not doing their own research, which I doubt that a lot of people do. But
I need to go because I got to mentally prepare for Sam Harris because I get terrible stage fright, so I'm gonna go.
Well,
Okay.
I hope you represent me very well today with Sam Harris.
I will.
All right.
Bye.
Mike,
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Live from America podcast. Good night. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.